engage the cool kids? And I'll start with yourself.
You want to start with me?
Yeah.
Sure. In a sentence, I think the cool kids, as a general rule, are early adopters. They like to play with new ideas, and if you get the cool kids on board, they'll pull in the rest.
Yep.
And cool kids, by being very generalised here, are confident. They're generally authentic. If they like an idea, they'll sell an idea onto everyone else, and they'll pull the others forward.
Brilliant. Yeah?
I definitely agree. I think the cool kids are the ones that most people follow. A really good book that described that is actually Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. I think it is.
That's right.
Yes. And it described about how you just need that a few people to pick up a certain trends or certain things, and the rest of people follow. However, I think that there is the other way around as well. Oftentimes you see when the mass of people getting on board on something, there are the cool kids then follow as well. We see that in big companies or big corporations, when there's change management or change happening, the majority of companies do it first, and then the cool kids follow. And we see that happening as well. So I think that's equally as important as well.
Brilliant.
Me.
Telaine. Yeah.
I agree a lot with Kirk, but also I think that they're the most, people are scared of them more. So then we lose them, so then they're not engaged in what we want them to be engaged with or whatever.
Okay.
Whereas then we'll lose, that's what I'm trying to say, we'll lose them if we don't go to them first, usually.
Definitely. And they'll sway power.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm really interested to hear from you. So coming from the perspective of a young person that potentially a lot of the things that are spoken about today and tomorrow would have been relevant to, I'm really interested to hear from you in all honesty. What, as a young person, needing potentially some support, were you attracted and repelled by in terms of the initiatives that were out there? What did you want to get engaged with, and what did you want to notice?
I actually had never been engaged with anything other before Reach. I always refused to go to at Prince of Wales Hospital. There's a youth thing that you go to or whatever, and I refused to go there because it was there's a psych there, and there's nothing wrong with me, really. I've had a hard upbringing, and that's what shaped me into the person I am. It's not that there's something wrong with me. And I think that people forget that there's actually nothing wrong with us. It's just what's happened to us growing up, or the things that we've had to go through, that turn us into the people that we become. And I think it just stresses me out a bit that that there's not enough honest places. For me, when I came to Reach, knowing that it was somebody my age trying to tell me to be a better person, it was a lot easier to cope with than somebody that was 40 to 50 years old. It felt like somebody was looking down on me and telling me what to do, instead of being look, I can see where you're going wrong, but this can make it a lot easier for you. And people being brutally honest with me, so calling me on all of my shit. Sorry, people. Calling me on everything that they thought was bull crap. I really needed that.
Have you ever said that word, bull crap?
No.
It
made me feel really awkward.
Being very polite for you. It's nice. So you wanted somebody that was going to meet you at your level, and somebody that spoke your language.
Something that was just real. Instead of somebody being sit me down in a room while I sit there and tell them what they want to hear for an hour and a half, just so I can get them out.
Brilliant. So, on the language thing, Ehon, you've got a choice word that you've used to market your men's health campaign. Tell us a little bit about that.
So before I go there, I think Telaine raised a few really important, very, very interesting and very important points as well. Things that we consider when we design Soften the Fuck Up. One is that young people don't like being patronized. Secondly is young people don't like losing control or losing power. Third is young people don't like being thought of as they have problems or they need help. Or something is wrong with them. Just because they have a tough upbringing doesn't necessarily mean that they need help. They might not have the best mental health, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have problems. And there was a few things that we picked up straight away from the research that we did. So that's why we Soften the Fuck Up. We were very, very careful when we design our language. So things like, we don't use the word get help. We say take control or take action. Because you don't need help. You need to take action. You need to take control. And that's what's different. When it comes to the name Soften the Fuck Up, we thought about it for a really long time. So I've always wanted to do a campaign changing the perception of mental health and also, looking at what does it mean to be a man these days. So I asked my friend, give me some ideas, and we went through all kinds of stuff. From things like pots, that the chocolate you eat, pots, hard on the outside, soft on the inside, all kinds of stuff. In the end, we can't come up with a name, and as a joke, he's like, why don't you just call it Soften the Fuck Up? And we just laugh about it.
Yeah. Brilliant. I mean, every time you say the title, there's a bit of a shudder that goes through the audience. But he just said it again.
The best part is the chief minister of ACT actually say it, like, Soften the Fuck Up. Everyone laughed in the ministerial room. Yeah. And then after a while, he's just like, what? Can't I swear? He was like, I think it's a good thing to swear. And so everyone started swearing after that. So we considered the risk of doing it with that name, and we also considered the risk of not doing it with that name. And I think that I'm an entrepreneur. I don't think about the risk of doing certain things. I think more about the risk of not doing certain things. And for us, there were a lot more risks not trying than there were risks trying. For me, even if it failed, at least I would then pick up a lot of things that I could learn from that as well. So after that, this branding and things like that and language became something that was very, very important for us in everything that we do. And I always say that, for example, we hear things like women empowerment, feminism. You never hear things like men empowerment. You probably never will hear about men empowerment because men it would give a very different stigma about men empowerment. You hear about feminism, but you never hear about masculinism because that's going to give you a very different stigma as well. So that's why the language is very important. We're not talking about changing what man is. We're changing about rethinking about the role of men in today's society. And how can we take the strength of being a man, being masculine, and all the great things about being a man and turn it into a positive, lessons for all of us, but also building a stronger, more resilient society.
Brilliant. And so tell us, how has it landed on the audience?
It's been going really well. Initially, I thought, we're going to engage a couple of thousand people over the year. We're going to get a few people who's going to talk about us. We're going to predominantly be on social media because no traditional media is going to pick it up. But in the last 2 years, so in about literally a month from now, it will be our 2 years anniversary. Wow. Right now, we've engaged over 60,000 people. Wow. And when we say 60,000 people, we only talk about people who have stayed on the website for a minimum of 2.5 minutes. Because for us, 2.5 minutes is the necessary time for them to read at least 2 pages of content.
Sure.
So that's how we calculate engagement. So over 60,000 people. We've got tons and tons of stories. I'll just share one. There's this guy called Ben. He wrote to me. He's a Walkley award-winning journalist. He's 20-something. I won't tell him his age. I won't tell his real name either, just to protect him. And he said to me that all his life, he's been a typical Australian dude. And for him, when he struggled with mental health issues, or when he feels down, all he needs to do is to go for a run or go kick some balls and he'll be okay. And that's what he did for about 2.5 years. And one day he found himself writing his suicide note without him consciously thinking about it. And after all of that, he started planning his suicide and everything else. No one has ever said anything to him. No one has ever, even tell him that, hey, I think something is not right here. I'm worried about you. But it was while he was on Facebook, one of his friends posted, saying, how funny is this video? You guys need to check it out. And it was a link to Soften the Fuck Up.
Wow.
So he thought, that's kind of funny. So he clicked on it, and he watched the video, and then he read the blog, and he read the next story. And then it wasn't until the next story that he's like, wow, like there are men out there just like me. People who love footy, who love rugby, and they suffer with things that I suffer with as well. Yeah. But they've been diagnosed with depression. I've never been diagnosed.
Brilliant.
So he ended up he packed his bag, called his parents, and said, tomorrow I'm checking into the mental health clinic. So he wrote to me when he was at the mental health clinic in Brisbane. I flew up to Brisbane to visit him, and he told me that, Ehon, things are still difficult, but I'm getting better each day. Wow. At least I've destroyed that suicide note. And that's when I thought, you know what, it's been worth it.
Incredible. Good. So I want to circle back on some of the learnings, but first I want to hear from you, Kirk.
Sure.
Kirk, I've known Kirk for quite a few years, and he's probably not going to like the way that I describe him, but I see Kirk as an incredible content producer, and he's somebody that has an insatiable curiosity for other people's worlds. So a lot of the video content that he produces at the moment, he's filming people that would never usually get on screen, and he's helping them to communicate their stories. But he's got a real knack for making things cool. He can make pretty much anything cool, whether it's warball or an 80s aerobics class. He's genuinely got a really good knack for making things that people want to be a part of. And so I'd love to hear from you, Kirk, when you're creating content, and Kirk's worked with teenagers for, was it close to 10 years? You worked with the Reach Foundation
Sure,
and John Carnegie's.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I wanted to ask the question, what do you think about when you're creating a piece of content to make it engaging, make people want to be a part of it?
My life at the moment, and has been for some time, is creating content. And not always for teenagers, for all different ages, but teenagers is just as easy to talk to as anyone else. And the rules for creating content that people want to watch are simple. And I think the first two principles I really think about, first of all, is know your audience. And if I was to create something for a teenager right now, doing actual research and understanding the audience I'm about to hit is vital. How can you create something that they're going to consume and want to understand about unless you actually know them, know what they're into, know what they're inspired by, know what they're consuming. Whether you like it or not doesn't matter. It's about understanding it, understanding an audience. So that's a very, very vital point. And then the other point I think that I look at at the beginning is to be interesting. And again, it sounds obvious to be interesting, but there's a lot of stuff out there, and this generation we're working with is sort of an on-demand generation. I think of them at the moment as being able to have whatever they want at any point in time. And if you're not interesting, then it'll just fade into everything else. So if you're making a video, or if I'm making a program, or whatever I'm doing, the question I ask myself is, what are the reasons that they're going to talk about this experience or talk about this video after this thing is done? So say I've got a 5-minute segment in a 30-minute show on the ABC, and it's watched by 800,000 people. How does my thing not get washed up amongst everything else that's happened in that half an hour, that's happened in those couple of hours they watch TV that night, that's happened in their whole day? You have to be interesting. So that's sort of the basis from where everything else goes from there.
Yeah. And I was asking a few questions over lunch. You talked about the cell.
Yes.
I want to get you to talk a bit about that.
Sure. God. I think after those initial points, and let me just have a look at my little page here. After those initial points, I think that in terms of the research, if I'm creating something new, I start then to look at what else exists. So being creative isn't about coming up with something brand new from nowhere. It's about going, okay, here's my idea, being very aware of what you want to achieve from the start. And then from being very aware of what you want to achieve from the start, everything else sort of falls into place after that. You start working out what the brand is. You start working out, what are the hooks are going to be, and all these other bits and pieces. And I suppose, so after being very aware of what you want to do, then I suppose the research comes in. Why am I doing it? Who's doing it well already? And what can I steal from those people? So it's like, those guys are doing a great job. Subi's doing a great job with the way that they do their live show for fashion. What is it about they do really well? Well, they let go of rats live at the thing, and this created this stir. Okay, there's a great idea. There's a great idea that Jay-Z's doing over there, or Kanye, the way that they released their song recently by projecting things. Okay, that's a great. So it's stealing these ideas and then wrapping around your idea to produce something new that's innovative. So, and then it's like, okay, when you've made this thing, it's like, oh, how am I going to then sell it to the cool kids? What's the hook? What's the bit that they're going to latch onto so that sparks their interest amongst all the clutter of everything else? So it's after sort of being very clear on what you want that these other things in terms of, say, the sell can then come forward that then you can then push out.
Brilliant. So it's kind of like the hook that you're talking about. How do you initially get their attention when there's just this plethora of information and content flying around there in order to bring them in?
This is a great your whole story is such a great example. From the name is such a great hook, through to the reasons behind it. The reasons were already there, and then the name came out of that. More so than here's a funny name using the word fuck in it. Now, what's the organisation going to be? It came the other way around, and then it made sense.
Yeah, you described pretty much all the things that we went through. You know, when we think about, what's the typical thing that a young man say to another man if they were saying that, hey, I'm really struggling. My girlfriend just broke up with me last week. I just don't know what to do. The first thing they say is, harden the fuck up, mate. Like, seriously. So we look at who they are, where are they, what kind of language they speak, what are the things that they say, and then from that we then start planning on, the kind of things that we then...
And I'm sure you did this too. After you sort of nutting this stuff out, one of my biggest lessons has been to test run it. Have people that you can run it past. Run it past the 19-year-old kid that I know, that's a good friend of mine, or the 25-year-old. Just keep telling people, just running this idea, hearing what people have to say, get this feedback, and then it's through that feedback that you can start refining what you want to do.
So test running it with your target audience and the people that you're scared may not take it up.
And your peers and whoever, but test running, talking about it, not thinking that this idea you've come up with in your mind is perfect.
Brilliant. So with time in mind, where I want to finish off is... got a captive audience of a huge bunch of people that have turned up here out of their care for young people, and a lot of incredible initiatives that are going to be spoken about up on this stage, and I'm sure that we won't get to hear about, that will be embedded in the people in this room and in this stage. What would be your advice to somebody that was going out there going, I've got this great thing, I know that it's healthy, I know that it's constructive for young people, I know that if they just adopted it, it would give them great results. How would you recommend they go about engaging those young people? What's your number one tip for them? Start with Telaine.
Be real. And don't do it unless you actually want to do it.
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of people that work with young people forget why they're actually in their role, because one day they were passionate about helping young people. And because there's that one annoying child in that class that pisses you off every single day, you take it out on all of those annoying little kids that you see. But really that little annoying kid just needs to be loved and cared for. And if you just sit back at your table for 2 minutes every day when that kid pisses you off and close your eyes and remember why you're there, I think that you'll have amazing programs and amazing classes with amazing young people that have so much potential.
So be real, be authentic, and come from the right place.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think that'd be...
A good tip.
I'll pick on that be real thing because I think that's a very, very important point. One is that if you're not cool, don't try to be cool.
Yeah, please don't.
One of the questions that I was asked is, how do you youthify issues for young people? And I was like, you can't.
Yeah,
if you're not cool, you're not cool. That's the real. That's the whole
That's
point.
reality.
Yeah, but more importantly,
Find
if you
some
look
cool
at research, what young people really look at currently is 3 things. Young people most value 3 things. One is commune. The idea of sense of belonging, sense of relationship, sense of connectedness. They are who they are because of the friends that they hang out with, or the people that they hang out with. These are young people. They're not who they are because of my family's last name, because of the party that I vote for, because of where I live and things like that, which was very, in the olden days, how it was. But in today's society, it's about who I hang out with, who my friends are, what an organization I volunteer with and associated and affiliated with, what's the organization's values and their perception. Second thing that motivates them is authenticity. Young people cut through bullshit really, really extremely well. If they don't like it, they tell you they don't like it. If they think it's crap, it's crap. If they think you're uncool, dude, you're uncool. And the last thing is surprising. You might find it surprising, but young people more than ever is very, very motivated by justice. whether it's social justice or personal justice. They can't stand seeing other people getting, bullied. They can't stand seeing other people suffering and things like that. And although I know that right now bullying rate and stuff, all those kind of things that's happening is still quite high, but you see more and more young people becoming more empathetic. That's because they have no choice but to become aware of all these issues. Why? Because they're constantly connected. They don't want to read this news, but their mom's sharing on their Facebook, their aunt is emailing them, their grandfather is forwarding this news article to them. They cannot not disconnect from all these issues that's happening. So young people are motivated by these three things. So use that. But the second, again, back to Telaine as my case study, is that we are in a sharing economy. We are at the peak of what we call experience economy, which means that young people pay for the experience. They don't want to own anymore. That's why Spotify is so famous. It's so popular because Spotify for them, I don't need to own that song. I don't need to own that CD. I just want to listen to that song and listen to that CD. They pay to travel. They don't necessarily pay to buy the next phone or the next iPod. For them, having something to be able to use the smartphone technology is enough. It's not about the Apple or the Samsung that I'm using. It's about having the experience of using a smartphone. That's experience economy. Back to sharing economy. Telaine is a case study because I've been sitting next to her all day, and I found that she's a great case study because she say and do things that I find really interesting because she is the typical teenager. Technology is a sixth sense. She doesn't live in this thing called the virtual world and the real world. For her, the virtual world and the real world are two similar things. We older people say, I'm going to go on the internet to do whatever we need to do. They go, oh, I don't know that thing. All right, I'll pull out my phone and I'll start Googling it. For them, there's no thinking about going onto this thing because they are already there. It's a world for them. So Telaine, all day, she's uploaded at least stuff onto Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, where else?
Maybe, I'm pretty sure that's just it.
And I'm pretty sure most of you guys in here have done that as well.
And do you want to say why you were doing that?
Well, for me, it's more like suckers. I got to see the Dalai Lama today and you didn't. Well, not just that, more like you said I'd never make it anywhere and look where I am today. That's
your identity is.
But you know what? You get brownie points if you don't upload it, but I uploaded it for you. Took a picture of her and then said, Telaine is here hanging out with the Dalai Lama. You get bonus point for that. So this sharing economy...
Do it!
You do,
Somebody.
you do.
Brilliant.
And that's the reality of young people.
We're getting into a very technical world, but you're saying enter their world and use their mediums.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Allow them to share and let what's the perception if they share that? They share soften the fuck up, hey, you're cool.
Yeah.
We're talking here how to engage young people with the program.
What's the one thing that you would recommend? Golden rule.
And everyone's been tipping more than one thing. I feel like I want to tip more than one thing.
Go, do more.
I'll be quick though. I just want to reiterate, know your audience. So do your research and run your idea past people. Get feedback. I think that's really, really key. Immerse yourself into the world. Try to understand. Seek to understand in the same way that if you were trying to make a product for any other sort of organisation, you would understand the market before you're into it. I think it's the same with teenagers. This sounds so obvious, but be interesting. Why is someone going to talk about your idea later? How will it? You think about I was thinking about my teachers at school that I remember, and they're the ones that were interesting. They presented the ideas in a way that made me remember them, and everyone else I forgot. I think that something that spins off that is be playful. If you guys don't watch South Park, you should. South Park, there was this great documentary last year called 6 Days to Air. And if you're not aware, South Park make their episodes in 1 week. So they come into the office on the Thursday morning after their show went to air on the Wednesday night, and they go, what's our show going to be next week? They come up with the idea, they write it, they voice it, they animate it, and it goes to air on Wednesday night at 9 o'clock. These guys in their office have a huge, big tray of Lego that they just go in there and they play and they talk and the ideas come up around that. And being playful, I think, is vital for coming up with ideas, but also in terms of the way you present ideas. Being playful is good. Right. And be ballsy.
Yeah,
or I got in trouble actually once for saying ballsy. So be gutsy, I think, and be prepared to take some risks. In terms of being it might be in being authentic. It takes a risk to be authentic, but I think that Being risky shows your humanity, and it means that it raises the stakes, and people see that when you raise the stakes. It makes the idea original, it makes it innovative, it makes it sort of have a bit of electric to it.
Fantastic.
And I think that's also good.
So play and take risks. Our time ended a while ago, but you can see why this is the beginning of a conversation, because it's a really interesting one. It's one that I would love to sit here and keep going. And I think that if we spend so much energy, there's so much heart, there's so much passion in creating these initiatives for young people, it'd be incredible to see if we equaled that energy with trying to find out what is the way that they're going to sink their hooks into it and eat it without being asked to. So please thank our panellists, Kirk Docker, Ehon Chan, and Telaine Cowdrey.